Apologies for the false start. Shalom, everyone, and thank you. And we are going to jump right back in with Ramin Parsa, who is an activist and lover of Israel from Iran. And let's just go straight into it. So, Shalom, Ramin, and thank you for joining us.
Shalom, Daniel. Good to be with you.
It's also good to meet you. I think this is the first time that I've seen you.
Yes, correct.
Wonderful.
Me too.
So,
nice to connect with you here. And all the viewers, I bless all of them.
Absolutely. It's wonderful. I was going to let you start by sharing a little bit about yourself, or we can shoot into questions, whatever you feel most comfortable with.
Sure. I can give you a background of where I come from for the viewers who may not know my story. I was born and raised in Iran as a Shiite Muslim. All my life, I was told to hate Israel, Jews, Christians, America. Every morning in the school, they told us to shout death to America, death to Israel. They painted Israeli flag, American flag, so we would step on them to dishonor them. And, it was full-blown propaganda, brainwashing, indoctrination in the school, in the media, newspapers, textbooks. Every day we had, the propaganda against Israel and Jews. And they said the greatest honor in life is to become a jihadi, to become a shaheed, to go and, killing the so-called infidels, which are Jews and Christians. And on the way of killing them, if you get killed, then you go to paradise and you have 72 virgins. These are the stuff they told us every day. I literally saw movies on the state media of the regime in Iran. They showed us videos of the Jews chasing a Muslim boy, trying to kill him to use his blood to make matzah bread. And these are the contents that they created and tried to brainwash and demonize Israel. Their most focal point was Israel and America. And they said they're going to destroy Israel, they're going to conquer America, and turn the White House into a mosque. These are the stuff they told us all day long, every day, every week, every month, all long year. And these are the things that they told us. And but then at the same time, they were telling us these things. They were oppressing us. They were beating our women. I saw people being executed. When I was going to school, I saw people hanging from a crane, and they accused them of being infidels or working for Israel or for America. And I had nightmares for weeks seeing people hanging in front of me, and not once or twice. I saw probably 2-3 dozen times people being hung from cranes. I saw people being beaten publicly and tortured. Then eventually, and as a young boy, I really loved God. I wanted to, serve God. Who is God? They told me it's Allah. Muhammad is his messenger. Quran is his book, and Sharia is his way. We have to do things that Allah says. That maybe, hopefully, one day we go to paradise. But then what happened was, when I was 16 years old, I was arrested and tortured by the regime, and that was the beginning of me questioning Islam and the whole regime. And because they claim to represent Islam, which they do actually, and that's the real Islam. So then I began to see how cruel Islam is, and I turned away from Islam. And at the age 19, for first time, I heard the gospel. I became a believer in Yeshua, in Jesus, the Messiah, and he changed my life. He gave me a new heart. He put love in my heart for people, especially for Israel and Jews. And I just love how millions of Iranians are experiencing the same. They're living Islam, and millions are becoming Christians, becoming believers in Yeshua. So this is what's happening in Iran. The regime has oppressed everyone in Iran, the women, all minorities, Christians, Jews. They talk about all people of different walks of life. They have been persecuted, oppressed by the regime, impoverished. And so if you go to Iran today, you buy 2 pounds of beans or 1 kilo of beans. With that money, you could have bought 27 cars in 1978. So just imagine economically, they oppress people socially, politically, internationally. Everybody thinks Iranians are terrorists, but the Iranian people are different than the regime in Iran. The people of Iran are the people of music, art, songs. They love poetry, literature. They are people who are family. They're warm-hearted. They welcome people. They love Israel and America. They want to be friends with America and Israel. And everything the regime said, it backfired. In other words, everything the regime said was bad, people now believe it's good. And everything the regime says is good, people believe it's bad. All this Palestinian movement and all these things, now Iranian people hate that kind of stuff. And they want to be friends with Israel and America. So God is really reviving Iran. as bad as it looks, people think, oh, there's war, but this is like a surgery that people are going through this surgery to be saved and healed from this disease that has caused so much pain in the whole region and around the world.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. I have so many comments, but we'll get into them during the questions.
Sure.
But so many thoughts on how the Iranian people now are hating the adventures that Iran is doing outside of Iran, like Hezbollah and whatever, and all the money that they're spending, the real being at the $1.47 million, but we'll get there all later.
Yes.
You mentioned when you started just now about your seeing the executions, the cranes, the hangings. How did that affect your view of justice as a young boy?
Well, as a young boy, they told us that these are criminals and they are spying for the enemy. So they justified their killing. But then, as time went by, we saw that the regime was doing to us exactly what they told us Israel is doing to Palestinians. They were beating us, stealing from us, torturing us. I mean, they literally took land by force from people. They took land from my family. My father, my grandfather were landlords, and they took land from us. They oppressed us. They stole from us. They tortured us, they beat us. And as I said, when I was 16 years old, I was arrested, tortured by the regime. So then I began to see that maybe those people who were executed also were innocent, and they were. In January of 2026, the regime in Iran murdered about, people say 32 or 35,000, but I believe it's 86,000 people were murdered, slaughtered by the regime in Iran, and hundreds of thousands wounded, many arrested. My own brother was wounded and arrested. 5 in my family have been wounded. So imagine if in one family 5 have been wounded. Imagine the scale of how they murdered and killed people. And so they see that the Iranian people, they see that the regime ruined their lives. They destroyed their livelihood. And my experience is representative of the whole nation. The whole nation hates the regime in Iran because the people of Iran, are people of poetry. They write poems, they sing poems. They are people of, they just want love and family, fellowship, music, art. They want to dance. They want to be free. They're not people with AK-47 running around, shouting Allahu Akbar. They want to do jihad and kill people. They really they lean toward the West. They want to be like the Western countries. They want to be free. When 9/11 happened, the only people who were mourning in this region were the Iranians and Israelis, the Iranian people. They had vigils and they were crying and they were mourning what happened on 9/11. All other Muslim countries were celebrating and passing pastries and candies. The same thing with October 7. October 7 happened. The only people who were mourning were the Iranian people in this region. All other Islamic countries were celebrating. So we see that the Iranian people are different people. And the rulers in Iran, the Ayatollahs, are not really Iranian, they're not Persians. If you read the book of Esther, in the book of Esther, Haman was not actually a Persian. He was an Agagite. He was descendant of king of Amalekites, Agag. And he somehow came to Iran and got in the position of power. And he decided to abuse his power to murder the Jews. And God turned the table over. The same thing with the Ayatollahs. The Ayatollahs are not Iranians. They are Arab Muslims from Iraq and from Lebanon. They came to Iran, and somehow after revolution, they got into power. And now they are abusing their power. They've stolen the wealth of Iranians, trying to destroy Israel. It's the same thing. It's the same ideology. It's the same, basically, belief. And it's rooted in 7th century when Muhammad started his ideology, and he basically began to kill the Jews and Christians. And he said, I will not allow a Jew, a Christian, to remain in Arabian Peninsula. And he did that. And all the countries in the Middle East once used to be Christian or Jewish. Look at Iraq used to be the Chaldean Christians. Syria was Assyrian Christians. Look at Lebanon, the Maronite Christians. The Egyptians were the Coptic Christians, and it goes on. And Muslims took over after 7th century. Islam started, and they began to conquer one by one, force many of them to speak Arabic, and also to murder and force conversions. This is how people became Muslims and how they began to speak Arabic. So it was an Arab Islamic colonialism that took over the whole region. And their goal, by the way, is not just this Middle East. They want to conquer the whole Europe, which are doing, unfortunately, through immigration. And then they want to conquer America. So this is their goal. And What Israel is doing, Israel is fighting on behalf of the civilized world, on behalf of the free world. And the world, instead of appreciating Israel, are putting pressure on Israel, condemning Israel. UN has issued more condemnation against Israel than any other country in the world combined. So we see that this is
Many
the
times over, indeed.
exactly, and hypocrisy, and we see that we are standing on the right side. But the good news is that God is on Israel's side, and God is on our side, and we will win. And that's why Iran is being free. And I'm praying every day that Iran will be free. And one day there will be a flight from Tehran, Tel Aviv to Tehran, and we can go to Iran and visit the tomb of Cyrus and Xerxes and Artaxerxes and Esther and Mordecai, Daniel. And Iran has historically been a friend of the Jewish people. I mean, if you go in history, Iran, the Persians were the only people who did not oppress the Jewish people. The Egyptians did, the Babylonians did, the Assyrians did, the Romans, the Greeks, they all oppressed the Jews. The only people who actually were friends with the Jewish people were the Persians. And if you read the Bible, you see, in the book of Ezra, chapter 7, Artaxerxes gave gifts to Ezra for the house of the Lord, for the temple. He sent Nehemiah to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. He permitted Nehemiah. He also, we see in the book of Daniel, Darius, he proclaimed that the God of Israel is the only true God, and everybody in my domain must fear him. We see Cyrus, his name is mentioned 27 times in the Bible. And in the book of Ezra, he says that the Lord God of Israel has chosen me to build him a temple in Jerusalem. He is the only true God. And in Isaiah 45, God calls him my anointed one, my Mashiach, my shepherd. So we see that God, the Persians, they were really good friends. The Magi's who came to worship the Mashiach when he was born, when Jesus was born, Yeshua, the Magi's were Persians. They were the first worshippers of the Mashiach, Yeshua. And so we see that historically Persians have always been friends with the Jewish people, especially now because we are the only two countries who are non-Arabic, and also non-Islamic, because the Iranian people now they don't believe in Islam. Iran is not a Muslim majority country anymore. Millions have left Islam, and there are 75,000 mosques in Iran. 50,000 are closed due to no attendance, and even the 25,000 open is only a handful of old people who have nothing to do go just to chat there. So Iran is becoming non-Islamic. The Iranian people have been oppressed by Islam, and they're rejecting this ideology, and millions are embracing Christianity. Iran has the fastest growing church in the world. Millions are becoming Christians, and this is why this campaign against the regime in Iran right now, the war of Israel and America against, not Iran, against the regime in Iran, because we have to make this distinction that Iran is not the regime in Iran. So that's why this campaign is so successful. And I see the day that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu will be flying into Tehran to open the new embassies, and embassy of Israel and Iran will be opening in Jerusalem, in Washington, D.C. And that's the day that we will see peace and prosperity and friendship. And then Israelis can travel to Iran for vacation. Iranians can come and visit Israel. It's going to be beautiful day. And this regime, that's why we have to pray that this regime will be completely destroyed, because they really are a hindrance to peace. They're a hindrance to prosperity. The regime that has caused death and destruction, not only to Iranians, but also to the countries in the region, especially Israel. And also they caused death in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, everywhere. Even Russia's war against Ukraine, the Iranian regime has been supplying that regime, Russian government, with ballistic missiles and drones to fight against Russia. So once this regime is gone, I believe the war with Russia will stop. Russia and Ukraine will stop. I believe all these proxies will disappear because no more cash, no more weapons. I believe that Israel will have rest, at least for a while, from all these enemies, and Israel will be prospering. Iran and Israel will be friends and allies. And also strategically and geopolitically, just think about this, because Russia has had three allies in South America. Latin America was Maduro, which was giving oil to China almost for free. And also then you had Assad in Syria, and then the regime in Iran. So one by one, they're being taken out. And then we see that the regime in Iran was giving free oil to China, almost $15 per barrel, which is like, a quarter of the price of the market. So Chinese, of course, like that and benefit from that. So once the regime in Iran falls, US has more influence, and then Iran will give oil to India instead of China, and India does not have to buy oil from Russia. So these are all geopolitically will be a benefit to America, to Israel, and to the free world, and to the kingdom of God. It's amazing how what's happening in Iran is already influencing the people in the region. I've seen hundreds of videos from Afghans who are saying they're so inspired by the Iranian people. They also want to be free. They also want to bring down the Taliban. They also want to be free from Islam. Women want to go to school and to have freedom. So this is already inspiring people in the region. And once this regime is gone, it would inspire other people to rebel against Islamic tyrannies and to break free from the yoke of Islam and to experience freedom and life. So this is what's happening, and I'm so excited because this is a holy war. This is a righteous war that we must defend. We have good wars, we have bad wars, but this is a good war that we have to support, pray to win, to have total victory, and this is exactly where we are right now.
Very strong words. Many things to think about, to pray about, to talk about. The one thing that I want to jump on right now, it's relatively minor in that incredibly powerful statement, but you mentioned multiple times the Iranian people, for example, that the Iranians were the only ones who didn't persecute and oppress the Jews while they controlled the land of Israel, or that the regime is not the people, and that a distinction needs to be made. You also spoke about how the regime oppresses the people. And I want to remind our audience that, of course, the Iranian people are not Arab and don't speak Arabic and so on. I want to remind our audience that Iran is made up of many, many ethnic groups and not one people. There's the Baluchi and the Azari and the Assyrian and the Kurds and so on and so forth. And my question to you, which is not on my list of questions, but nevertheless, is the regime's treatment different between the Persians and all the other ethnicities, specifically in regards to oppression and in regards to how it treats the churches of the ethnic groups as compared to the Persian churches?
Yes, the regime has been discriminating against everyone who doesn't have allegiance to their ideology. It doesn't matter what race you are. If you don't have allegiance to Islamic ideology and to especially Shia Islamic, they will discriminate against you. I remember I traveled to the eastern part of Iran when I was a teenager, and I saw there's no roads, no asphalt. I mean, people were so poor, and it's because the regime, those parts of the country are Baluchis, and they are mostly Sunni, and the regime doesn't want the Sunni influence to increase. That's why they don't take care of them. Also in the western part of Iran, where the Kurdish people are, and also the lords and everyone. But this regime is an ideologue regime, and they go by who has allegiance to their ideology and who doesn't. If you don't have hatred for Israel, if you don't have a love for Islamic, Shia Islam, if you don't have allegiance to them, they will hate you and discriminate against you. And they ask you, when you get a job, you have to answer Islamic questions. I had friends who went to get a job, and they ask him who was the first imam, who was the second imam, the third, fourth, fifth. I have to go all the way to 12 imam. You have to answer these questions to get a job. It's so ridiculous. Like, if you don't vote, they don't give you a job, because the Iranian ID looks like a passport. And this used to, maybe now they have the new IDs, but before it was like a passport. And every time you vote, they would stamp it. And when you go to get a job, they look to see if you have voted. And if you haven't been participating in election, they will not hire you because they see you as not supporting the regime. So this is how the regime has been controlled, micromanaging people economically, and Christians have been murdered and persecuted. They closed so many churches that were started during the Shah of Iran. Many churches that started, but the regime closed them and killed the pastors. But they thought they're going to destroy the church, but it grew actually faster and more. And that's what Yeshua talked about. He said, unless a grain of wheat does not fall and die, it will not bear fruit and will not multiply. But since they have persecuted the church has been growing. Islam is dying, and the mass majority of Iranian people, they don't believe in Islam anymore. I remember, like, when I was a child, and when people had children and they went to get an ID for their children, they would put a list in front of you to choose the names, and all the names were Arabic, Islamic. Muhammad, Hussein, Hassan, Abdullah, all these Islamic names. But today, the Iranian people are changing their names to Persian names, to Darius, Xerxes, Kuresh. My son, his middle name is Kuresh, Cyrus. And so
Wonderful.
Iranian people are embracing, identifying with their national heritage. I was born an hour from the tomb of Cyrus, from the palace of Xerxes, the grave of Darius, Xerxes, Artaxerxes. I didn't know who they were. We knew they were kings, but we didn't know what they did, who they were. And they didn't tell us on purpose, because if we knew Persian history, we would not have been enemies with Israel, because they knew that Persians were friendly to Israel. Cyrus, they actually wanted to destroy the palace and these historical places, and if you notice, when Muslims take over Islamists, the first thing they do, they try to destroy historical places, museums, because so that people don't have anything to identify with except Islamic ideology. In Iraq, you saw ISIS was trying to destroy museums and historical places. So in Iran, and that's why we used to go to mosque for Persian New Year when I was a kid. Like the Christians in America go to church for New Year. And in Iran, we used to go to mosque. Today, people go to the resting place of Cyrus, to his tomb, for Persian New Year, which is a sign that people are identifying with their national heritage. People of Iran have awoken to their national identity, to national heritage. And this happened to Daniel, the prophet, when he was in Persia, in Babylon. He read the Torah and the book of Jeremiah. That's when he knew why they were in captivity. And then he began to repent and pray. And that's exactly what happened to Iranians. They have read the true history. Now they're realizing, wow, we are Persians. We are sons of Cyrus and Xerxes and Artaxerxes. Look at us. Now our names are Muhammad and Hussein and Ali, and they're killing our women on the streets, hanging our men. We have no food. We have no bread. So Iran has gone through a 47 years of suffering, or rather 1400 years of suffering. And now they are rejecting Islam. That's why the whole nation is being reborn into a new identity, which is the ancient identity, but new to the sense that people are rejecting Islam and embracing this identity. That I'm proud to be a Persian. I'm an Iranian. I'm Persian. I'm not Muslim. I don't want Islam. And the regime, they actually closed the road that leads to the tomb of Cyrus. When people wanted to go, the regime blocked the roads. But at the same time, the regime was telling us to go to Mecca, to go to Najaf, to Karbala in Iraq. Even they would provide food and even travel, and they would provide, even subsidize the prices, and they would encourage people, go. If you go, you will get points, and Allah will be happy, and so forth. But they closed the road that would lead to the tomb of Cyrus. So you can imagine, if these people were Persian, why they would be against people going to the tomb of Cyrus. And Ayatollah, as long as he was alive in his worthless life, he never once went to the Persepolis, to the tomb of Cyrus. So imagine, it's like, for example, let's say Israeli prime minister would never go to the Kotel, to the Western Wall, something like that. That you have an Israeli leader who has never gone to the Kotel, has never gone to the the Western Wall. And this is exactly how they were. They're not Iranians. They hate Persian history. They hate Persian culture, and they wanted us to have Arabic identity. In fact, Nasrallah and Ayatollah both said this. They said that Iran has no history except Islamic history. And so people now, thank God, have awoken, and they want to be like Cyrus. When our role model was Muhammad, we wanted to be like Muhammad. We would swear on Muhammad. We would say, by the soul of Muhammad, I swear. I didn't say that. I didn't do that. So we would swear by his name, by Quran. Now people are cursing Islam and Muhammad and all these Islamic things. They say, we don't want this. And the Iranian people are saying that I am a child of Cyrus, Xerxes. We have Persian history. We have all this rich, beautiful history. And now in the world, everybody thinks we're terrorists. Everybody thinks we are bad people. And it's true. I've traveled around the world, and the moment they say Iranian, they feel, oh, you're a terrorist, you're dangerous. But and they destroy the reputation of the Iranian people, the Persian people. And that's why people are rebelling, and they are, people are laying flowers in front of the Israeli embassy, consulate in the US, in Europe, Iranian people supporting Israel. They're waving Israeli flag during the protest against the regime. When October 7 happened, everywhere there was a pro-Israel rally. Iranians were there with Israeli flag, with Persian flag, in solidarity with the Israeli people. So we see this nation in this region will become two allies, two brothers, two friends, and Iran will go overnight from number one enemy to number one friend and ally of Israel and America, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a beautiful unity and friendship and partnership that will cause so much good in this region, at least for now, for a while, until the Lord comes back, until the end of the time.
As they would say in Iran, inshallah.
No, actually, we don't say inshallah. That's an Arabic word.
Right. As they would say in the Arab world, not in Iran. But anyway.
Exactly. So we stop saying inshallah, mashallah, barakallah. Anything that has the word Allah, we don't want to say it anymore.
Of course. Now, even though I have a really interesting question about the 12 imams that you mentioned, your friend's interview, they asked him about, and possibly what the Iranian government is doing now, because it seems like they've gone crazy and are shooting in every direction. And many geopolitical analysts would say that it's to raise oil prices and to have the Gulf states pressure, using their lobby to pressure America. But does it actually have to do with bringing the imam, bringing the end of days, bringing Gog and Magog in their version?
That's correct.
What are your thoughts of that?
That's correct. They believe Mahdi, the 12th Imam, will come when there's chaos everywhere. They believe that he will come when there's peace everywhere, there's no war, everything is perfect, or when everything is chaotic, which in both cases we don't need him, because when he comes, he brings more chaos. And their Mahdi is the Antichrist of the Bible. And basically, for them, the Antichrist is the Messiah, because it's like a reverse. And they believe in all these things. But politically speaking, they thought, because this is exactly what I prayed, that God will turn the wisdom and the counsel of the regime in Iran into foolishness, that they would make the wrong mistakes. And they did by attacking the neighboring countries. They proved Israel and America to be right. All these years, America say to and Israel, this regime is dangerous, is a bad regime, a bad actor, evil. And they proved Israel to be right. They saw the countries who had no problem with this regime or had nothing to do with them with this war. Even the countries who tried to save them. Oman was mediating for negotiation. They attacked Oman. They attacked Qatar, which was one of their allies. They attacked Kuwait, who had nothing to do with them, and Bahrain, and even Azerbaijan and Turkey. So by doing those things, they proved Israel right, that this regime must be gone. They proved that that even those countries who once believed that this regime could stay, they now believe that no. Imagine if they had nuclear weapons. Imagine if they had an atomic bomb. So now they basically put those countries on Israel's side, on American side. And that's why this regime cannot survive, because they want to bully the world. And imagine if they had nuclear weapon, they would close the Strait of Hormuz completely, would take the whole world hostage, bullying the world. And that's why this is a war, and we must win this war. This is not a question of, just take some leaders out, take the uranium, enriched uranium out. This regime must be gone. Otherwise, they will build again. Now, thank God, we have President Trump, we have Prime Minister Netanyahu, who are determined, who are good leaders, who understand. Imagine if we had someone like Biden and some leaders who had no clue what's happening, and they would not care. They would not enforce sanctions. They would not care what's happening. And that regime would acquire nuclear weapon. And this regime is more dangerous than North Korea. North Korea says, closing the doors, no, don't bother me, I don't bother you, I'm here, you're there, stay away from me. This regime, no, they want to expand. They want to go take over other parts of the world. They have tentacles in South America, in Latin America. They have tentacles in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen,
in Africa, all over.
Everywhere, exactly. So this regime is way more dangerous than North Korea. North Korea says, just don't bother me. The communists, don't bother me. I'm sitting here. If you don't bother me, I don't bother you. But this regime, they want to take over the world. They have this, Gog and Magog ideology. They want to bring chaos and destruction and death They definitely want to destroy Israel. They want to destroy America. And this regime is very dangerous, and we have to pray that they would crumble and be completely destroyed.
And indeed, like all Muslims, they believe that as soon as there's a Muslim presence in a land, then it becomes their land forever and it belongs to them,
Yeah,
and they have to fight to get it back in jihad and so on and so forth.
exactly.
And nuclear weapons would just make it worse, of course.
Exactly. And amazingly, Iran, the Persians and the Israelis, the Jews, have this thing in common. They're the two only nations who are taking their lands back from Islam, from Muslims. Once upon a time, for 1400 years, almost, Israel was ruled by Muslims. Sometimes by Crusaders, but mostly by Muslims, the Ottomans. All these Islamic Omar and the Muslims ruled the land. Now, for first time, Jews came back, took their land back, and they established their own government. And the same thing is happening to Iran. Persians are taking back land from Islam, and they're kicking Islam out. And imagine this is a shock to the Muslim world who wanted to conquer Europe, and now they're losing Iran and they're losing the region. That's why they're so afraid and so, desperate. So we have to pray that this regime will not survive. That I pray all the time for the Israeli jets, as they going, I hear them fly. I pray for their success. I pray for protection for them. I pray when I hear missiles coming, I pray against them, that all the missiles will be defeated and they will not harm people. So I believe that this regime, once it's gone, Iran, and Isaiah 19, there's a prophecy that there will be a highway from Egypt all the way to Assyria. And when it was prophesied, Persia was also some part of Persia was a part of Assyria. These two nations, we can drive from here to Iran and back and forth, and it will be such a beautiful thing to see, to witness, to go see the beauty of culture, and see the Iranian people, and they can come here and visit Israel, go to the Kotel, go see historical places, and we're going to have such a friendship. And Iranian people are completely different. I hear people in America, some of these, naysayers, they say, "Oh, this is another Iraq war, 25 years, boots on the ground, billions of dollars spending, and then soldiers dying." This is different. See, the Iranian people are not like Iraqi people or Afghanistan. Both Afghanistan and Iraq, they hated America before the war and after the war. They were not begging America to attack. They were not asking for help. America, come and liberate us. They still had allegiance to Islam. Even Saddam still had a lot of support, and same thing with Taliban. But that's why after 25 years, Afghanistan is the same now, with Taliban in power, and Iraq is almost run by the terrorists. And the same thing. So when Iran is free, this will be a successful project because the people are different. It's not the same people. In Persian, we have a saying. We say, everything that is round is not a walnut. So just because there was a bad experience in Iraq and Afghanistan doesn't mean this will also be, because the people of Iran are welcoming this attack. They were begging for America and Israel to attack the regime, to help them overthrow the regime. They're begging for this, and not 10% or 20% or 30 or 50, like 90, more than 90%, maybe 98%. The people have been impoverished. They are hungry. They have no water. They have no future. People can't get married. I know 70% of Iranians are under age 40. 70% of Iranians are under age 40. Young
Very young
people have
demographics.
aspirations. They have dreams. They want to get married. They want to have children. They're not jihadists who want to go do jihad. So that's why vast majority of Iran is hostage. And a beautiful nation with such a rich culture and history is hostage to a handful of terrorists with guns. And that's why this is a just war we all must support. And it will not be like Iraq. It will not be like Afghanistan. The Iranian people will love to be free and to be friends with America and Israel. This was not the case in Iraq or Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the ripple effect that will happen when the regime falls regarding the whole wars all around the world. And you just mentioned Iraq and why it won't be like it. Iraq too, as you said, controlled by terrorists, in particular by the Shia-backed, Iran-backed terrorist organizations, and that this would end that as well. So it's a double reason why, because it will end the situation in Iraq as well. But let's go back a little bit. to your childhood and talk about the day you were arrested. What was the crime that the regime accused you of, and what were the conditions in your cell where you were held? What went through your mind during that time?
It was horrible. I saw the cruelty with my own eyes, injustice, oppression. I was going to a wedding. I was in a car with some relatives, and they had some alcohol. And based on Islamic Sharia law, alcohol is haram, is forbidden. Even in your house, buying it, selling it, making it, touching it, even it's like haram. So what happened? And people in Iran, they do it secretly. They drink and make it. They make wine. And I was in this car. We're going to the wedding, and some of the people in the car had some alcohol. And in Iran, there's these Sharia law police, Basij. They close the streets suddenly, unexpectedly, and they check all the cars. Who are you with? Making sure you're obeying Islamic Sharia law. And sure enough, they pulled our car over. They smelled the alcohol, and they took all of us out. And they put us in a bus, and the bus got filled so fast because they arrested so many innocent people. And for example, woman, if you're with a woman, that woman has to be your mom, your sister, or your wife. You can't say, "Oh, it's my girlfriend," or "It's my because you're not supposed to be with a woman that is not your wife, your sister, or your mom. They say Islamic Sharia law. She's unlawful to be with you. So they arrest both of you. They take you to court. Or if you're a woman and you don't have enough Islamic hijab covering, your headscarf is not proper, they arrest you and they harass you. So stuff like that. And so they took us, the bus got filled, they took us to a confinement, they took all our clothes off, bare naked, poured cold water on us, and they began to whip us with these big, thick cables. And then they had us face the wall, sit up, sit down, sit up, sit down. And they were laughing at us, they were mocking us. And something I hadn't done even. I didn't drink alcohol. And they were beating us and mocking and laughing at us. And I saw the cruelty. And they were doing it with glee. And then they threw us into a room with 50 people and we're choking, all young people, 17, 18, 19, 15. It's not, they don't care about underage, overage. They beat people, torture people. They treat human life as trash. And, no food, one boiled egg in the water, boiled egg in the morning, one at night, one bottle of water for everyone to drink from. That was our food. 60 seconds to go to restroom. One time in the morning, one time at night. That was it. So this is how we lived. The whole room smelled like urine, and every morning when they change the shift, the guards would change the shift. They would come a roll call the names, like 4:30 in the morning, 5. And if you don't answer on time, they would beat you in the head with a baton. And I saw their cruelty and have no mercy. They have no compassion. They have no love. They have nothing good. And I saw their cruelty with my own eyes. And the same thing that I saw as a child, they justified, they said that they are infidels, was happening to us. So then they took us to court with shackles on our hands and our feet, and mullah sitting there, and then we had to pay a fine. Actually, my family bribed them. They paid money. Sometimes they take you to your neighborhood and they whip you from your neighbors. And so we bribed them. And then when I came out, that's when I began to question, Islam and all these things. But amazing, even when we're taken to the court, the judge wrote the judgment based on 7th century. They said you have to pay like 4 camels. So we had to calculate how much is a camel today and pay the equivalent of that to the government as a fine. Imagine that. So the Ayatollahs, not only they dress like 7th century, they also think like 7th century. If you look at the Ayatollah, with the turban, with the robe, this is how they used to dress. And they also think like back then. They're uncivilized, wild people who believe in a sword, who believe in subjugating non-Muslims and forcing Islam on everyone. And they believe this is their victory, this is their mission in life. And they can't tolerate someone not bowing down before their idol or demon of Allah. Just like Haman. Haman was angry with Mordechai because he would not bow before him. And Muhammad was angry with Jews and Christians because they would not bow before the demon, the idol of Allah, was the moon god. They said, we don't believe your prophet. We don't bow before your Allah. And he was so angry, and he said, I'm going to kill all of you. And he did. So this is how it started. And I saw all those cruelty. And not only, and I saw people, for example, Basij, which Israel is now bombing them, thank God. One time I saw with my own eyes. I was on the street at a phone booth, and the Basij is, every neighborhood, they have their own Basij. And they're a paramilitary group that they enforce the will of the Islamic regime, the Ayatollah, and they intimidate people. They come with a group with guns. So they came and they had a AK-47, and so they came to this guy, which was my friend actually, and I was a bit distant. I was on this phone booth, and he was back there. And they asked him, "Did you drink alcohol?" He said, "No." He said, "Open your mouth." He opened his mouth, and then he hit him with AK-47 in his belly. So he would exhale, and then he would smell if he had alcohol or not. Imagine that. So instead of, in America, in Israel, there's breathalyzers,
they have their own savage version of that.
Exactly. So they hit the guy with the AK-47, and the poor guy almost, threw up. Almost everything came out of his mouth, and he just exhale. So he would smell, okay, if you had drunk alcohol or not. Stuff like that. I saw another guy. He had a T-shirt that had American flag on it, a small American flag. And they grabbed him, they tore his shirt, and they beat the guy, and they had to walk home with no shirt on. So imagine a bully with no respect for human life. No, this is how they treat people. And the Iranian people, if you meet average Iranian people, even right now, if you go to Iran, if I can drop you in one of the cities, the people are so nice and completely different than this regime. If I drop you in one of the cities in Iran, and you say you're from Israel, people will love you. They take pictures with you. They take you home, make food for you, bring tea for you. But if I take you to Lebanon or Jordan even, or to Egypt, and you say from Israel, you probably will not make it out. So that's why the people of Iran are different. They have a different culture, different mindset, different thinking. And this regime is 180 degrees opposite of the people. They are a bunch of terrorists, have taken the country hostage. They control the money. They're stealing all the money, giving it to Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, to militias in Iraq. And they give it to... Why do you think Hezbollah is joining the war and attacking Israel? Because they know if the regime falls, all the cash goes away.
200 million a month.
Exactly. Separate from their ideology. And in Lebanon, an average soldier in Lebanon, military soldiers, not Hezbollah, they get about $600 per month. This is their salary. A Hezbollah terrorist gets $2,000. So imagine.
And that, of course, is similar in Iran with the IRGC and the Artesh.
Correct.
That the IRGC
Exactly.
is much more funded than the actual Iranian army.
Absolutely. And they did this on purpose. Why they did that? So that IRGC, which is consistent of all the people who have allegiance to the regime, that they would get a stronger, an army which is from the people. They get weaker and weaker and weaker. And that's why it's like, Hitler having the SS. So this is their SS, IRGC, to protect the regime, not to protect the people, not to protect the country, but to protect the regime from the people. So in the January, the uprising was so strong that people almost toppled the regime. They came out with machine guns. They mowed down the people. They shot people to death, women, children, men, without mercy. They went to the hospitals. They raided the hospital. They shot tear gas in the hospitals. They shot people. They finished off people in the hospitals. So
and there were
so much
hangars
blood.
full of bodies. It was terrible.
And so much bodies that even the morgues are full. They had bodies. They actually took over a food company, and they used the refrigerator as their morgues. And so sad what they did. And that's why there's so much blood between the regime in Iran and the people. The people have parted ways. They say, we don't want this regime. We hate this regime. And not only that, we hate Islam. And it was an evolution. It's not that I'm saying that Iranians got to this point overnight. In the past 47 years, even 20 years ago, 25 years ago, Iranians believed maybe we can reform this government. Maybe because there are two parties, the regime, the Ayatollah's party, the fundamentalists, and you had the reformists. So people, the Ayatollah would bring someone very crazy like Ahmadinejad to scare the other people to come to vote, so they would not get this one. And this is how they drag people to the polls, to the voting booth. And so they would bring someone crazy to scare them, and people would just run to the booth, vote for the reformists. So then they show the world, see, people are participating, 25 million people are voting, 30 million people. So people believe that maybe we can reform this regime. In the Green Movement, they believed in Musavi. They thought he would be. But now they say no reformists, no fundamentalists. We don't want the regime, and we don't want your Islam altogether. So it was an evolution that it got all the way to where we are right now.
It's also the evolution of the economic situation that,
exactly.
3 years ago in the protests and in 2008 in the protests, there were still parts that were not participating because their situation was better. But now no one has anything. There's no money. There's no water. The real depreciated. No one has anything to lose.
Exactly. And this is why the suffering caused them to wake up. Because as you said, some people had enough money, they didn't care what's happening, who's in power, they were well enough. But all this economic suffering caused them to see other oppression. Hey, and now that we protest, they want to kill us because we are unhappy with the economy. And now they say, we don't want with you. So the people got from economic, suffering, and because of economic oppression, to see other parts of aspects of society. No, they're beating our women, they're torturing our men, they're hanging our kids. And then the people, a whole nation, became completely against not only the regime, but also Islam as a whole. So it's a beautiful thing to watch, and I'm amazed how God did that. I believe this is from God. And there's a prophecy in Jeremiah 49 about Elam. God says, I will break the bow of Elam, the foremost of their might. I will bring 4 winds from the 4 corners of the earth against Elam. I will destroy the kings and leaders. I will scatter them all around the world. There will be no nation where outcasts of Elam will not go. Everywhere you go, you find Iranians. And then it says, but in the last days, I'll destroy the leaders. I'll establish my throne in Elam, and I will bring back the captives of Elam. And amazingly, when I was in the States, I was a pastor there. I asked Iranians, do you like to go back to Iran? No, my life is here, But now ask every Iranian, they want to go back to Iran. And this is a prophecy. And hundreds of thousands outside Iran have become believers in Yeshua, have become Christians. So when they go back to Iran, imagine underground church will come out, and there will be a wave of revival that millions will become believers. And then Iran, and instead of sending missiles and bombs and terrorists funding terrorism, they'll be sending out Bibles and preachers and teachers and sharing the gospel with neighboring countries, with Tajikistan, with Afghanistan, with the Emiratis, with Kuwaitis, with Iraqis, with the Turks. So this will be a complete reversal in the purpose of the nation, the calling of the nation, which the devil has perverted it to send death and destruction. But the calling of Persia is to send blessing to the world, just like what they did during Cyrus. They sent blessing from Persia. They sent the Jews free. They supported them financially to build a second temple. And the same thing with Nehemiah building the walls of Jerusalem, Ezra coming and reviving the nation in the faith of the nation of Israel, the Jewish people, by teaching the Torah, reading the Torah. And the same thing with Darius. So we said the purpose and calling of Persia has always been to defend Israel and the Jewish people and for the kingdom of God. But the devil has hijacked the nation and perverted the calling, and instead is sending terrorism, enmity with Israel, hatred toward Israel, sending funding terrorism, missiles, bombs, and the things you see. But the people are not like that. That's the difference that makes a difference.
In brief, tell us a little about your journey and discovery of Yeshua.
So after my experience, what I told you when I was arrested, because prior to that, I was very devout. I was going to mosque, and I know every child, I believe, they love God. And this is how we are created. We just have this as a child, we love God. And they told me Allah is God, and Muhammad is his messenger, and Quran is his book, and Sharia is his way. So I was really devout, and my whole family were my mother, my sisters. We used to go to mosque and cry and weep, throw money, and we're Shiite Muslim. We used to go beat ourselves trying to please Allah, get points, walking on hot asphalt and so forth. And I even used to do with my friend. We used to do Islamic muazzin, calling for Islamic prayer, and I was trying to do my best to please Allah. After my experience, when I saw the cruelty of this regime, I claim to be, representing Islam. I left it. I began to question Islam. My mother said, "No, Islam is good. These radicals make it look bad." I said, "It's fair enough." I began to read the Quran and the Hadith with translation to see whether what they say is true or not. And then I saw, wow, so much evil in the Quran, in the Hadith. Surah 928, Muhammad cursed the Jews and Christians. Surah 551, it says, "Don't be friends with Jews and Christians because they're friends of each other." Surah 929, it says, "Kill those who don't believe in Allah, His Messenger, in the Sharia and in religion of truth, which is supposedly Islam. And even if they're Jews and Christians, kill them unless they pay jizya, blood money." Surah Muhammad, verse 4, it says, "Behead the infidels wherever you find them." That's why you have ISIS beheading people on live TV. Taliban is stoning people, killing people. So, and it's everywhere. Look at Nigeria. Look at what Christians are going through there. So that's why I saw and I knew that this is not from God. So from 16 to 19, after I lost my faith in Islam, I was crying out to God, "Who are you?" And I was very broken, depressed because of my experience. And then my father passed away. And all of that, hand in hand, caused me to just be isolated, broken, depressed, questioning the meaning of life. Why do we live 80, 90 years? We work hard, we go to school, we get oppressed, beaten, tortured, and then you die at the end. Who is God? If there's a God, who is He? If there is no God, then what am I doing here? Who made me? And I knew that God, Allah, Quran could not be from God, and Allah is not God. But I wanted to know who is God. And because Muhammad attached himself to Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Noah, he said that there have been 5 greatest prophets in history, and Noah, Abraham, Jesus, Moses, and then he said himself, Muhammad. So in my mind, when I said no to Islam, I said no to all of them, to everything Muhammad has ever said, to even Jesus, Moses. And I didn't know Jesus was a Jew from Israel. I didn't know the connection between Torah and the gospel.
Wait, so isn't Jesus a Palestinian?
That's what they say. I thought he was an Arab. I didn't know he was, a Jew, that had bar mitzvah, who, was circumcised, and he came, born in Bethlehem, and he died in Jerusalem, rose again in Jerusalem, lived in Nazareth. We didn't know those things. All we heard that, Jesus was a prophet, like other prophets, and Muhammad is the best and the last. That's all we heard. But then when I began to, I was crying out to God, "God, who are you? If you're real, I want to know you." And when I was 19, I had a radio that would work with battery. I was depressed, broken. I was in a dark room, and this this radio would work with battery. And I just came across this channel that somebody was sharing a testimony. And I heard the testimony that somebody was going to kill himself. And as he was going to take his own life, he heard this beautiful music, and he followed the music, and he heard the music, and he went to a church, and he became a believer in Yeshua, and his life changed. Wow. That's all I heard. And I felt something happen to me when I heard that. But because of Islam and what happened to me, I was antagonistic to a religion. I didn't want to be deceived by another religion again. And my idea of Christianity was what I would see on TV sometimes. Pope traveled to Poland or to Germany, and this dress with the cross. That was I said, no, I thought it's the same version of Islam, European version. And so I didn't make much of it. But a few weeks later, I heard on satellite, which was broadcasting, both are broadcasting from outside Iran, the radio and the satellite. And I heard that Yeshua died for me, and he rose from the dead. And if I believe in him, I'll be saved. And I said, no, how could this be true? I rejected that. And then again, a few weeks later, I heard again. And again, I said, no, how could God have a son? This is nonsense. I rejected that. And the third time I heard, I said, okay, Jesus, Yeshua, if it's true that you died for me, you rose from the dead, I don't know who is telling the truth. I don't want to be deceived again by another religion. But if it's true, if you're real, then you hear me. I ask you to come into my life. And the moment I say that, a heat went through my hand, to my left hand. It went through all my body. And I felt this love, this joy. I was crying. I felt this peace I had never experienced before, this joy, this love I had never experienced. It's like somebody put his hand into my heart and took out all the hatred, anger, bitterness. And I felt this peace and joy. I felt love toward other people. I wanted to love others and do good things to others. And it was instant. It wasn't like a 12 steps of this or that. It was an instant transformation. And imagine all those years we went to mosque, we cried to Allah, we prayed to Muhammad, to Allah. We went to the shrines, we beat our, not one time we got an answer to our prayers. Actually, things would get worse and not better. But first time I said Jesus, Yeshua, and boom, he showed up. And I felt his love, his power. I felt his presence. It's like somebody lifted 500 kilo of weight off my shoulders. And I felt light. I was about to fly. And then I went to my mom's house. My mom saw me. She said, "What happened to you?" I said, "Why?" She said, "Your face is shining." And
Wow.
because before I was grumpy, sad, and depressed. And now she sees me, I'm smiling. And I told my mother what happened to me. And she didn't have a bad reaction because she saw it had helped me. She was worried about me. And then she had pain because she had a chronic disease. And she always put towel on her belly. She had pain. So I put my hands, I had this confidence that whatever I ask, Jesus will do for me. Because first time I called him, he hears me again. So I put my hands, I prayed for my mother in the name of Yeshua. I didn't even know I have to pray in the name of Yeshua or put my hands. I just did it. And my mother got healed. The pain left her.
Amazing.
And it's been 21 years. She never had the same problem again. And my mother became a believer. And one by one, my sisters became believers. And then two of my brothers became believers. So one by one, my family, and now my niece and nephews. So this is happening in Iran, all over Iran. Yeah, people are
Quick question,
looking.
jumping in. Your family, are they still in Iran, or are they all over the world, other places, America, Israel, Canada, wherever?
They're in Iran. Two sisters are in Turkey, but the rest are in Iran. And they are longing to be free. They want to be free. And my family is just like every other family. They have been suffering, oppressed. They have been, economically in every way. My brother, he was working for a medical company, and his salary was $100 per month. $100 per month, and working sunrise to sunset, hard, all day long working for. And then the regime goes and gives $2,000 per month to Hezbollah terrorists. So people saw all of that, and they're so angry with this regime that put the people in the back burner and began to waste their wealth. They spent $2 trillion on the nuclear program. It cost Iranians $2 trillion.
Crazy.
And it was evaporated in 5 minutes. It was destroyed in
Thank you,
5
Donald
minutes.
Trump.
Exactly. Thank God for Donald Trump. But imagine $2 trillion spending on nuclear program, and then beside all they gave $50 billion to Assad at one time. $50 billion. And the guy fled to Russia and is playing computer games today.
Yep.
And billions of dollars to Hezbollah. Just this month, past month, January, they gave $1 billion cash to Hezbollah. Because I saw these people from the regime traveling back and forth every day. The foreign minister, the head of the national security, they always travel. I said, why are they traveling so much? And you know why? Because they have diplomatic passport and they're bringing cash for Hezbollah.
Yep. Which is, thank God, that at least too little and too late, but the Lebanese government is starting to maybe finally wake up a little, kick out the Iranians. For now it's lip service, and we'll see what happens. And it is too little, too late, but there is at least a small change in the air.
They have to. If they don't, because you see, Lebanon was a Christian country, and this Hezbollah took over, and they turned this country into, run by this military group that are jihadists, and they hate Israel. And they're using Lebanon to launch attack against it. Right now, they're firing missiles and rockets at Israel. So if a country allowing terrorists to use their land, to fire missiles at Israel, Israel has the right to defend itself. And of course, Israel has to step in, and the government of Lebanon has to step up and dismantle Hezbollah. This Hezbollah will be destroyed. But when the head of the snake in Iran is destroyed and there's no more cash, I guarantee it, these groups will disappear faster than, faster than anything else. It will be so quick that these groups will be disappearing.
Not only that, once the government there takes out those groups, with Israel's help, of course, with America's help, then the Saudis and the Emiratis will be willing to invest in the country and help rebuild it. It's something they're not willing to do when it's wasted because the country is controlled by Hezbollah.
Exactly. And you don't want to travel there. You don't want to be a tourist in these countries. Like Iran has so much tourist attraction, but nobody goes because they're taking foreigners hostage for gambles. They take him and they say, okay, you have to do this for us, unless we, they're accusing tourists of spying. And then they ask the governments to pay ransom or to do certain things in order to release them. Even right now, there are 2 French in prison in Iran. So we see this regime and its tentacles, they act in the same way. They're destabilizing Yemen through Houthis, Lebanon through Hezbollah, Assad, and then you had the militias in Iraq. It's like they're having these groups in these countries that are destabilizing the whole region. And now by attacking all the surrounding countries, they proved Israel right. That, see, this regime is against us. Imagine if they had nuclear weapon. So we need to pray for full victory, that regime will fall, that the entire regime of Ayatollah is destroyed, and Iran will be a free country soon.
We're running out of time, but before that, I just want to ask, how is it as an Iranian, 100% Iranian from Iran, living in Israel of all places?
It's amazing. I love it. I love the Israeli people. The first time I came here was 2015. I came as a visitor, and I felt home. I felt, the Persian culture so much close to Israeli culture, and I loved it. The Jewish people, the Israelis were so kind, so welcoming. And even now, I see my neighbors, my friends on the streets. I go to the store. They tell me, we're willing to be in bomb shelters for a few weeks if this regime will be destroyed and gone, and Iran will be free, and we won't have all this terrorism and so forth. So it's amazing to see how Israelis are kind. And I've never been subject of, racism or attacks or hatred. People are nice and kind, and good people. Israelis are good people. That's why I just love it to live here. My wife is Israeli, and we have a son who is the fruit of Iran and Israel. And he's a cute boy, makes everybody happy, which is a prophetic picture that when these 2 nations come together in love, the fruit will be this beautiful result of peace and love. So that's why I love this country. And people are shocked. When October 7 happened, I began to cook and take food for soldiers, for displaced Israelis, and they were so amazed to see an Iranian ex-Muslim is helping them in bringing food for them and loving. And I told them, we love you. We, the people of Iran, we are with you. We're not your enemy. And they were so encouraged to see that there's hope, that there's hope that people will be changed. At the same time, in Europe, they were chanting against Israel, protesting against Israel. But Iranian people are so different that they are the most Zionistic people in the whole region, even more so than Europe, which is amazing to watch.
Wow. All right. A few more questions. You mentioned a few minutes ago, about a free Iran that would sell oil to India instead of to China. Obviously, we could go on about the geopolitics of Chinese surplus of oil, Taiwan, and so on, but let's not go there now. Just recently, just a few days ago, it was reported that indeed India stopped selling its oil to Russia and stopped buying from Russia, and instead took over some of the Russian shadow fleets that are used by China, Russia, Iran, and in the past Venezuela to transport oil without, through the sanctions and so on and so forth. How do you feel? Because it seems like what you mentioned, and this was already something you've said before, was prophetic, is coming true, and that India is doing. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely, because China is heavily dependent on oil, and they buy from the regime in Iran, from Venezuela, and for cheap. They were getting pennies on a dollar. Iranian, like the regime in Iran, was giving oil because of sanctions. They give oil to China, and they would get like $15 per barrel, and they would get like even items, or missile fuels, fuel for missiles or weapons and so forth. And so the U.S. sees that this regime has a wealth of oil, ocean of oil, and giving to Russia and to China, helping these axis of evil to North Korea, Cuba. So what they did, they began to take over tankers. They toppled Maduro. They arrested him, and then Assad, which was an ally of Russia also. And then they came after the regime in Iran. So once this regime is gone, then and meanwhile, India was buying oil from Russia, and Russia was able to fund the war against Ukraine. So U.S. Pressured in India to stop buying oil from Russia, and once Iran is free, then India can buy oil from Iran, and this way they're not dependent on Russian oil. So Russia's oil will go cheap, and nobody will buy it, and that's why it will be bad for Russia. And then the Russian dictator Putin, he will stop invading other countries and attacking and causing war and death. Same thing with China. China will not be able to take over Taiwan or to wage a war because of no fuel, because of no allies. So this is geopolitically, it's so good for the free world. But Europeans are so foolish to understand that, and they're not. The UK took him like a week to agree to support, to allow their bases being used, or to send an aircraft carrier. And President Trump said, we don't need it anymore. We're already winning. And so we see that France is they're always like on the wrong side of history. And by what America is doing and Israel, they're making Iran to turn from an enemy and an ally of Russia, China, North Korea, Cuba, to become an ally of US, Israel, and the free world. And it would just change the balance of influence and power, which is so amazing what's happening. And it's not just let's go free Iran, which is one of their goals, but it's good for everyone. It will be good for the Iranian people. It will be good for Israel. It will be good for America, and for the whole region, actually. Also for the Persian Gulf countries, they will, they would not have this threat of the Islamic regime who was bullying them, and also in Yemen and the Houthis and all these paramilitia groups. So it'll be good for everyone when this regime is gone.
That's right. And like you say, I mean, even in the Gulf, they share the Straits of Hormuz with Oman. They share the natural gas fields with Qatar. They're bullying everyone into doing what they want. But anyways, let's move on. You've discussed, of course, the prophetic Elam prophecy in Jeremiah 49. Do you believe that the setting of the throne in Elam refers to a literal physical throne of a future king, for example, the son of the Shah, or is it a spiritual throne for Yeshua over the nation?
I believe it's the spiritual throne of Yeshua, meaning that majority will believe in Yeshua as king, and because it says my throne, where he is the king. But also where Yeshua is king, the Bible says where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. When a country submits to Yeshua, then also there will be, government will function well, and you have a good government. And that's why I believe the son of the Shah, Prince Reza Pahlavi, he's pro Israel, pro America, he's pro Christian, and he will be a good choice to lead the country after this regime and to form a government that will be. He said he will recognize the state of Israel immediately, and it will be pro-West and pro-America. But I believe both is true. Like the Lord will establish his throne in the sense that Iran will become a Christian majority country and no longer an Islamic majority country. And at the same time, it will have a good government that will be good to the region and for Israel and for America, which will be the byproduct of this of what God is doing in Iran, a fruit of the kingdom of God in Iran.
Wonderful, wonderful. If you had one thing that you could say to President Trump from the Iranian people, what would it be?
I would say, President Trump, we love you. We appreciate you very much. We thank you for what you're doing. You're on the right track. You're doing the right thing, and your reward will be great. You will be liberating Iranian people, 95 million Iranian people, and the whole region. You will rid the region of this evil, cancerous regime that has caused so much death and destruction. So we are doing the God's work, and we support you. The Iranian people support you, and we see the day you will be flying on Air Force One to go into Iran to open the American embassy after 47 years. And that will be your reward, and it will be a blessing. God will bless you, and you will have a great reward, both from God and from the people, for what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, one question from the audience. What is the biggest need for Christian if, and I will say when, Iran is free?
Very good question. We're planning to take tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of Bibles into Iran, because Bible has been illegal for past 47 years in Iran. We smuggled Bible through borders into Iran. We gave money to the Kurdish people, and they smuggled Bible for us into Iran. And also, we used to go to Turkey and the surrounding countries and give New Testament Bibles to Iranians who were visiting, and they would take them back to Iran. But the greatest need is Bibles. So when the Iran is free, my plan is to take a team from Israel, from America, and go into Iran on the streets, to villages, cities, and give Bibles to people and share the gospel. And this is the greatest need. Iran will need churches, we need discipleship, to go in and share the good news. I want to take worship team and worship on the streets and sing songs. And it's going to be a beautiful day. And many Iranians will receive it with gladness. Especially, imagine if you're Israeli and American, after the regime falls, because you helped Iran to be liberated, you will have so much favor with Iranian people. So when you go into Iran, you say, I'm Israeli. People will hug you. Thank you very much for helping us to be free. Thank you for destroying the regime in Iran. They will hug you, and they will listen to your message as well. Same thing if you're American. And so that's why the Iranian people, you will have favor with them to go and share the gospel. And they will listen, and they would hear gladly the gospel message. It's amazing. I'm looking forward to that day. And Iranians are very open. They're low-hanging fruits. So the Bibles are the biggest need after the regime falls.
All right. Well, I was going to end, but I'll give one more question, which is from my dear mother. How can I not let her ask? Now that they're the new Ayatollah, how will this affect the success of the war? Let's see how long he stays alive, but your thoughts. Yeah.
He's a dead man walking, because, or dead man hiding, not even walking. Because, listen, there's no difference between this guy, which is the son of the Ayatollah, and his father. He's a terrorist as bad as his father. In fact, in many aspects, he was running the country. Yeah, he's worse. And he was running the country because his father was, 85 years old, and he was a drug addict. Actually, Ayatollah was smoking opium. And so most of the country was run under the shadow of his son, which is now became the supreme leader. But he will not last long. People don't want him, and U.S. doesn't want him, because that means they're not really changing the course they were on. They're doubling down on it, and it was just a matter of time when Israel and America will take him out, because the Iranian people are not saying we want a better economy. We want maybe this man to be our president. They don't want the whole regime. Anything calling Islamic regime, people don't want it. Even the reformists, and they don't want anything. They want this regime to be completely dismantled, the IRGC be dismantled, and to have a free government. And people would decide at the ballot box what kind of government and who they want as a leader. But I guarantee it, 100%, that the Iranian people don't want to do anything with Islam and with any Islamic regime or Islamic leader. They want a secular, free government where they can thrive and grow, and they can build the country, economy, roads, schools, education, investments. They want these kind of things.
Amen. I'll add, for people who don't know, the IRGC and the regime control a huge part of the economy through companies that are tax exempt and have monopolies in situations. It affects everything, worse than communism. but we won't go into that. I'm sure you could spend hours talking just about that. And I'll just say that one of our Finnish viewers said that your family name in Finnish means broccoli.
Broccoli.
Parsa
My
means
family name.
broccoli. And
In Persian.
Ramin, thank you so much for joining us. We could have talked for hours, and I have so much more to ask you, but unfortunately our time is short. I would love to do another session at some point if you're available, but in any
Sure.
case, God bless you all, and we all together stand for a free Iran that believes in Yeshua the
Amen.
Messiah, and you and I will take that flight from Ben Gurion to
Amen.
Tehran.
To Tehran. Amen. And please pray until full victory. No, as long as Moses had his hand up, the Israelite will prevail against Amalekite. And when his hands were down, they will prevail. So please have your hands up, prayer up. Keep praying until victory, total victory. Even right now, I hear fighters just going toward Iran. I bless them in the name of Yeshua, that they would be successful and protected. And pray for full victory until the regime is dismantled. Pray the regime is confused, scattered, divided, scared, that they would be completely dismantled and Iran will be a free country. We appreciate your prayers very much at these decisive moments.
Remember the parable of Yeshua for the old lady who went to the judge to get her day in court and kept bugging him and kept bugging him and kept bugging him. And Yeshua tells us to pray without ceasing.
Exactly.
Keep praying for a free Iran. We can make a difference. Our prayers breach the gates of heaven.
Amen. 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 Thank you
Amen.
very much. Very important.
Thank you very much, Ramin. Thank you all for joining us, and have a blessed week to all of you.
Thank
Shalom.
you very much, Daniel. Appreciate it. God bless.
God bless.